I call Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister's statement is an opportunity for a government to show vision. It's an opportunity to spell out a comprehensive plan and to demonstrate that they have a grasp on the challenging issues facing New Zealanders. This government have failed on all three counts when it comes to the Prime Minister's statement this year, because they have no vision for the brighter future that they promised New Zealanders all those years ago. Instead, they're content to manage a low-wage economy indebted to the rest of the world with declining standards of living and an escalating degree of environmental degradation. That is what they are promising New Zealanders. This is not a government with a plan for the future. It is a government of short-term wheeling and dealing, living for today and not worrying about future generations or what they are leaving behind. And this government will be defined by their dodgy deal with Sky City. That, if nothing else defines them more than the dodgy deal with Sky City, when even Matthew Hooton is saying that it is corrupt, the government should be standing up and taking notice. It is absolutely wrong. John Key promised New Zealanders a free convention centre that wouldn't cost the taxpayers a cent, aside, of course, from the increase in problem gambling that was going to go from the concessions that they granted to Sky City. He said that convention centre was going to be free. Then he tried to tell New Zealanders last week they were going to have to fork out some money or it was going to end up being an eyesore. And then he turned around and said, oh, no, we're not going to throw in the extra money anymore. We're just going to settle for a convention centre that is 10% smaller. Well, I agree with Andrew Little when he said to Sky City, a deal is a deal. And if this government have signed up to a deal for a convention centre of a certain size in exchange for the concessions they got, if they don't front up with that, then there is absolutely no guarantee that those concessions will be continuing. There is no guarantee those concessions will be continuing under a Labour government. A deal is a deal, and that's the message that this government, if they had the backbone, would be sending Sky City. John Key promised New Zealanders a higher degree of accountability when it came to his MPs and his ministers, and he has failed to deliver on that, and he now even fails his own test when it comes to openness and transparency. While the National Party are distracted by all of their internal manoeuvrings and the splits and divisions that are becoming daily, by the day, more apparent within the government, they are simply ignoring the big issues facing New Zealanders. The National Party like to think and like to tell New Zealanders that they are doing a good job of managing the economy. So let's actually look at that. I went back and I found the pre-election fiscal update from 2008. So what exactly did the National Party inherit when they came into government? And page 22 of the fiscal update prior to the election, it is there for everyone to see. Net core Crown debt, that's the amount of money overall that the New Zealand government owes, was zero. The government, when they became government, we owed nothing. It was zero. It is there for all to see. Now, of course, we were going into the global financial crisis, so there were some projections for government debt to increase, as you would expect in a massive economic downturn. And those estimates suggested that net core Crown debt by 2013 would become $13 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, $13 billion. So let's fast forward to last year's December update. And how did things pan out? As of the end of last year, 2014, the government had racked up, this government had racked up nearly $60 billion. Three times the amount forecast prior to the 2008 election. This government had amassed 4 times that amount of debt. These brilliant economic maestros had quadrupled the amount of government debt in their time in office. I recall Bill English and Michael Cullen's 7th budget after he'd been Minister of Finance, decrying 7 years of surpluses and still no tax cuts. Well, I'll tell you what, I want to hear Bill English stand up in this year's budget and admit that he has delivered 7 years of budgets and still no surplus. Not one surplus after his 7 years in charge of the government finances. Bill English has clocked up the largest government debt in New Zealand's history. Let me repeat that again. Bill English has clocked up the largest government debt in New Zealand's history. He has out-borrowed Rob Muldoon. He has even out-borrowed New Zealand's war effort for the Second World War. This guy, Bill English and John Key, have borrowed more money than ever before in New Zealand's history, and it has only taken them 7 years, 6 years actually, but 7 years. They are now into their 7th year, and they have amassed the largest government debt in New Zealand's history. That will be their economic track record. If basic economic management is the acid test for government competence, this government have failed spectacularly. Then let's talk about what that means for New Zealanders. Unemployment was at record low levels under the last Labour government, and it has increased under the National government. There are 46,000 extra New Zealanders unemployed, out of work, under National than there were when National became government. That is an absolute disgrace. And what about those who are in work, who can actually find work? Wage growth under National has been stagnant. It has been absolutely stagnant. After 9 years of solid wage growth, where those who went out and worked hard had the opportunity to get ahead, under National, New Zealanders have faced stagnant wage growth. While the cost of living has gone up, while GST has gone up, despite John Key's promise that he wouldn't do that, this government have kept wages low. They have been suppressing wages because Bill English actually had well, when it comes to openness and transparency, at least he was open about this. He turned around and said the low wages in New Zealand was good for us. It was good for us. It gave us a competitive advantage with Australia. Bill English, he was at least open about that. That's the extent of their aspiration for New Zealanders. They are their aspiration for New Zealanders. And I say that's not good enough. New Zealanders who work hard should be able to get ahead. We recognise on this side of the House that the nature of work in New Zealand is changing. At the beginning of the year, Andrew Little set out how the nature of work is changing. More people are working in small business than ever before. Some of those huge employers have been broken up, and those people are now consultants, they're contractors, and they are small business people. The nature of work is changing, and the Labour Party is aware of that. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to make sure that we get behind those small businesses and support them. What's the message? What's the message from John Key and Stephen Joyce? He's saying that anybody that thinks the nature of work has changed doesn't understand what work is. So they are saying to every small business person in New Zealand that they don't know what work is. And I say to them that actually all those small businesses that I talk to on a regular basis in my electorate, they know exactly what work is. They know exactly what it means to put their necks on the line to create jobs for themselves and create jobs for others. And this government are so arrogant that they try to tell them that they don't know what work is. Well, I say they do know what work is, and they need a government that's going to back them, and they're not getting that from this National government. They are so arrogant. They are so arrogant in their approach to small business. And I think it is a breath of fresh air that Andrew Little is getting in behind small businesses in New Zealand and saying that the Labour Party is going to help them get ahead. And as for the corporate welfare that this government seem intent on dishing out, they can't find money to support families who are struggling. Oh, no, they can't find money for that. Can't find money for education and health and those social issues that we know are so important. But they can find hundreds of millions of dollars in corporate welfare for corporates and for farmers. Let's not get into the irrigation subsidies or the subsidies for polluters or the absolute rort that's known as the Primary Growth Partnership that the Auditor General says there is no economic benefit from. Let's not get into all that. Let's just deal with the corporate welfare. Quite happy to find money to hand out to corporates, and they simply cannot find money for the families, for the things that would really support New Zealand families to get ahead. There is a better way. And let me tell you, the Labour Party's on the way back, and we are going to back New Zealanders to get ahead. We will bring fairness and decency back into government. Under Labour, New Zealanders will have a government that will back them to get ahead, and they will have a government that actually upholds some minimum standards of decency, which this government seem to have lost track of. This government have lost track of it, and this government is simply beset by sleaze and scandal and distraction, and they have lost track of the big issues that are facing New Zealand. Their economic management is a train wreck, it is a joke, and Labour Party will get things back on track because New Zealanders know they can trust our record. 9 surpluses in a row, record low unemployment versus skyrocketing debt and increasing unemployment. I know which way New Zealanders are going to go at the next election, and the Labour Party will be back. So don't get too comfortable over there, boys.
The Honourable Todd McLean.
Well, Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of a year it's always to get something off your chest, so congratulations.